That weekend, I tried to keep my distance from Jenna. I worked in the yard and ran a lot of errands. Didn't even check her phone tracker. For me, it no longer mattered. I felt only contempt for her. The fact that I was raising someone else's child was unforgivable. On Monday, I was at the car show again. I called the dealer in Albuquerque and told him I would drive the Beamer over and pick up the Miata. He replied, "Great, we'll have a late lunch when you arrive." It was a good day for a trip, so I told Anna that I would be gone all day. "Hold the line," I told her. "Okay, boss," she replied. She truly was irreplaceable. I need to give her a raise, I told myself. The trip was pleasant, as was the lunch. The other owner made me feel welcome, and I felt like I had a new friend. On the way back, driving the Miata, I really enjoyed myself. The top was down and the wind was ruffling my hair. I decided that I would call another dealer and get a black car. I needed to live a little, and I won't be needing more than a two-seater anytime soon. I pulled into our driveway in a red sports car. Jenna looked out the window and must have said something to Carrie because they both came out to watch. "Honey, why do you need this car? You know we need something with a back seat for Carrie," she said condescendingly. "I just picked her up from Albuquerque for a client." "Thought you might want to ride it," I replied. "No, honey, I don't like small cars," Jenna said with slight contempt. "Carrie?" I said, motioning for my daughter to sit down. "No, Dad. I feel bad enough that they tease me because of my last name. I don't want to be seen driving around with a Polish used car salesman." She said it like only a teenager could say it. I was stunned, to say the least. Where did this disrespect come from? When I looked at Jenna, I realized that she was acting as if Carrie had done nothing wrong. Great. Now both women in my house are disrespectful to me. I know teenagers aren't supposed to be best buds with their parents, but the hurtful way she said it made me look at my entire family life as a sham. "Well, I'm going to go for another ride. I'll be back as soon as I can," I said, putting the car in reverse and driving away. I drove along the roads of Silver City and its environs, fired up. My marriage was rapidly deteriorating. When I finally pulled into the driveway at 9:30, I immediately went upstairs, hopped in the shower, and climbed into bed. When I didn't come down from my shower, Jenna got up and came into the room. The light from the corridor shone directly into my eyes. I squinted and closed them. "What? Are your feelings hurt because we didn't choose a sports car? Aren't you going to come down and spend time with your family? You are not only a Pole, you are also a child." Where did this attitude come from? I had to believe it came from George. She spent time with him, and his stripped-down attitude towards my roots rubbed off on her. Now she is passing it on to her daughter. It was her daughter, not mine. I guess I should get that into my head. I may have to support her, but she is not my daughter. It looks like you and your daughter would rather not have a Pole around, so you might as well just fuck off. I was furious, and her attitude wasn't helping her one bit. She'll regret ever treating me the way she does now. Needless to say, from then on, the Kaminsky house was quiet and cold. The next day I called Doug and he came to check out the Miata. He was delighted. We talked the numbers over and he was surprised at what a great price he got. $3,000 less than Kelly Blue Book. When he was about to leave, having filled out all the papers, he said, "My best friend is in charge of purchasing for the university, and we change 16 cars approximately every 2 years. I know it's not much, but could you talk to him? Always happy to do business, and you know I'll make a deal with them," I said. "I'll ask Jim to call you at the end of this week." "Thank you," I said. That's how I grew my business, by treating people right and letting them know I valued their referrals. On Wednesday, my lawyer called me. "Hey, Kurt, I think I have a solution to your potential problem. Could you come by this afternoon to discuss it with me?" Of course, I can't wait to start. The atmosphere in my house is becoming simply unbearable. At a meeting that day, I heard the plan and liked it. It will take about 2 weeks to implement, but if it works, it will be worth it. During these 2 weeks, I slowly moved personal belongings and tools from my home to an apartment in a nearby city. Also, during those 2 weeks, George was anxiously waiting for those 24 cars to arrive to do some work that he could bill me for. When he asked, I just put it off. This past weekend I did some yard work, and when Jenna and Carrie weren't around, I cleaned out my closet and drawers. Jenna did laundry during the week so she could do what she wanted on the weekends. This was good for me because she didn't notice that my closet was empty. So this takes me back to that Monday night when I said to Jenna, I'm leaving. She started being rude and disrespectful to me again, both as a pole and as a used car salesman. In the past, I would go to a motel for a night or two, depending on how angry I was. On the Tuesday morning after this explosion, I arrived at the parking lot early and, as my employees were entering, I asked them to go to the conference room. I closed the door behind them. I had weekly meetings, so this was nothing unusual. I started the meeting. Good morning. As you all know, the cars that I bought a couple of weeks ago arrived yesterday afternoon. All of them have already been checked and prepared, so they are ready for sale right now. We no longer use George to do any work here. If he asks you, tell him we decided to go in a different direction and leave it at that. You've all been amazing. You're like family, so it's hard for me to come to terms with what's next. I paused and wiped a tear from my eye. I sold the business. They all looked at me. There was surprise in their eyes. However, nothing will change as far as your work is concerned. Well, besides Anna, you will perform some of my duties and, of course, will receive a corresponding increase. All of them, even in their surprised state, began to congratulate Anna. They all respected her and knew she deserved it. Anna, after the meeting, please come and talk to me. We will discuss some things. I will still be involved in the company, but only on an advisory basis and may sell occasionally. I don't want to take away your sales. They were all glad that I would still be around, at least sometimes. The meeting ended, and as we walked out the door, George was standing there. Hey, why wasn't I included in the meeting? He had been present at most of the previous meetings. Because it was a staff meeting, and you're not an employee, I said. He stuttered a little and then said, I see that the cars have finally arrived, so I'll get to work on them right away. No, they have already been carefully examined and prepared for sale. You don't need to do anything with them, I said sternly. He looked at me, stunned. But I will check all your cars, Kurt. What's happening? George, I sold the business, and the new owner wants to move in a different direction. I told him, not ready to explode at him. I'll save that for another day. I left everything as is. It became clear to me that sometimes it is better to say fewer words. I can't believe you sold the business, he exclaimed. What should I do now? Of course, it was all about him. He was basically told that he was out of work. Well, I said, you can pick up your check for what you did in the last 2 weeks. It wasn't that much. Anna used his services only a few times. He was relaxing before delivering 23 cars, thinking he would be busy when they arrived. How wrong he was. I didn't feel sorry for him at all. I just wish I could tell him that it was because he was a mean asshole. When I met Anna, I asked her if she could keep our conversation a secret. Of course, Kurt, you know I'll never say anything you don't want, she assured me. Okay, here's the thing. I created companies that I registered in Nevada. One of the companies buys this parking lot, the other buys that company. I am the sole owner of shares in both companies. At some point, I will divorce Jenna and make sure she doesn't get the business. Why? She asked. I moved out of my house. Jenna doesn't know it yet, but I'm not going back. She had an affair with George. Actually, Carrie is not my daughter. I believe she is George's daughter. I don't even know if Jenna knows about this, let alone George. They'll soon find out. I'm not going to get a divorce, but I will continue to pay utilities and taxes for our house. This way she won't be able to say that I abandoned her and take everything I have. Just in case she files for divorce due to irreconcilable differences, I don't want her to be able to take over the business. That's why I agreed that the company would be bought twice. Let them try to figure out what's going on. The proceeds from the sale will be spent by the time she gets her divorce done. Plus, I make next to nothing from consulting and a few commissions from sales. Anna, you are able to cope with daily operations. I'll be available to call if you have any questions. But let me say that I trust you, and I trust your judgment." The smile came back to her face when I told her about the new owner, but when she heard about Jenna and George, she looked like she was ready to shoot someone. This was a woman whom I truly admired and respected. I continued, "I have one more task for you, and then I will leave you. I need you to order a new sign and letterhead. We are changing the name of the business. This will further cement in George and Jenna's minds that the business has been sold to someone else. The new name of the business will be Helpless Car." I spelled the name, so I knew she had it right. She looked at me in bewilderment. "Someday I'll tell you why I chose this name. Suffice it to say, it tells the whole story," I said. She still looked puzzled, but she trusted me enough to follow my instructions. With that, I left, saying a few words to everyone as I left. I got into my car, an Audi, and drove down the road towards Albuquerque. About 2 hours passed when I received a call. Caller ID told me it was Jenna. I didn't expect her to call before the end of the evening. This has happened many times before when I left. I'd go away for a day or two, she'd call, we'd talk, and I'd come back. Everything changed for a while, and then we became the same again. After a while, we would have a quarrel again, and the cycle would start all over again. I decided to answer the call, waiting to hear what nonsense she would spew this time. "Hello?" I said through the speakerphone in the car. "Kurt, what's going on?" she said somewhat hesitantly. "Nothing, just going to Albuquerque." "Why are you going there?" "To pick up the car," I said without emotion. So what I heard must not be true. So George must have called her. Figuratively speaking, call your mistress to find out what is happening with her husband. "I don't know," I said. "What did you hear?" "George called me and said that you sold the business." "Why would he call you?" I asked, perplexing her. She corrected herself. "He's your best friend. He wondered if I knew what was going on." Best friend, what a joke. I was a joke to him. The stupid Pole is helpless and does not know what is happening behind his back with his own wife. Apparently, my family was embarrassed that I was a used car salesman, so yes, I sold the business. Now, you won't have to bear that stigma anymore. "Shouldn't we have talked about this first?" she said. I'm sure she was worried about how we would live now. "This is my company. I owned it before we got married, and I can sell it whenever I want. I just hope the new owner treats my former employees well." "So, did you get a good price for it?" Again, she was worried about how this would affect her standard of living. I didn't care. I just knew I needed to change jobs. I'll start looking after I take a few weeks off to relax. "What about a mortgage?" she asked. "Oh, I used the money to pay off the house. You don't have to worry about that. Now you just need to pay utilities and taxes." "What about food? What about gas? What about insurance?" she said, almost hysterical. "Oh, I guess I'm a stupid Pole. I didn't even think about them. Do you think you could take on more hours at your job?" Now she was excited. "When are you going to come back home? This is the moment of truth." "I won't come back," I said casually. "What?" "I told you that evening that I was leaving. You told me not to come back, so I won't come back. Don't worry, I'll find a way to pay all the utilities so the power won't be turned off." "You can't do this, Kurt. You must go back." I heard the desperation in her voice. "No, I really don't want to," I said dispassionately. "Kurt, don't do this," she cried. "I did it already." "What about your daughter?" she asked, trying to tug at my heartstrings. "You mean Carrie, the girl who is ashamed of her last name and the fact that her old man is or was a used car salesman? Kurt, she's just a 13-year-old girl. You can't take this to heart." "Well, it doesn't matter anymore. I won't be back again, so none of you will be embarrassed of me." With these words, I hung up and turned off the phone. Let her think about it. I knew that now she was trying to call me back and would be angry that I wasn't answering the phone. After calming down from the phone call, I tried to enjoy the leisurely drive to Albuquerque. I could only assume that the next call she would make was to her lover to get more information and to let him know what I had said. When I got to my destination, I turned my phone back on and saw that I had 5 messages. I listened to them all, 3 from Jenna, 1 from George, and 1 from Anna. I immediately called Anna. "Hi, Anna. Sorry, my phone was turned off. I have had unwanted calls. Yes, I know. Your wife and George called me to find out where you were. I told them you don't own this place anymore, so you don't come anymore. Hope everything is okay. Great, I said. If they give you too much trouble, tell them you're calling the police about phone harassment. I like it, she said. Kurt, you may feel like you don't have any family or friends anymore, but trust me, you don't. We are your family and always will be. Thank you, Anna. You know what to say. I hope your husband knows how lucky he is. Trust me, he knows. He constantly tells me about this. Never lose this. Don't take each other for granted. I'm not going to, she said. After hanging up, I wondered if I should call my cheating wife or this asshole. No, let them rage. I got out of the Audi and went into the parking lot office. The owner was waiting for me there. I have that Audi that I told you about. Would you like to discuss if we can make an exchange? Let's see, he said. He was impressed with the condition of the car, both inside and out, as well as under the hood. He looked at me. I can sell it in a week. Are you sure you want to make an exchange? I feel like I'm getting a better deal. You can reciprocate sometime in the future. I'm not here to make money. I'm here to get a sports car. Half an hour later, I was back on the road, top down, enjoying the ride. Now I had to decide where to go. North sounded good, so I headed to Santa Fe. Over the next 2 weeks, I traveled through northern New Mexico, Arizona, southern Utah, and Colorado. I wanted to be nearby in case Anna needed me to come back. I called her several times, and when it became clear that she had everything sorted out, I decided to head west. Of course, they kept calling me. At first they were annoyed, then apologetic, and finally there were notes of bitchiness in them. I listened, but I didn't care. When they called me and told me that the credit card had been canceled, I just laughed. When George called and said I was a terrible person for leaving Jenna and Carrie, I had to laugh even more. My lawyer actually sent me a message. Jenna called and threatened to file a stay-at-home order if I didn't contact her and come back. I called him back. Hello, this is Kurt. So, my wife called you with threats? I said. Yes, but I wouldn't worry. If you're still paying on the house, she'll have a hard time proving it. I can do something better for you, I said. I have a recording where I tell her I'm leaving, and she tells me not to come back. It's amazing. Send me a copy of it, he said. If she gives me any trouble, I'll take it to her lawyer. Let her lawyer try to force things. Thank you. I'll call you in a week to find out what's going on. I've traveled all over the Southwest. The AITA wasn't the most comfortable car, but it was fun. A lot of people looked at me. Even some of my tits flashed from bored, anxious, middle-aged women. But I wasn't looking for that. After all, I was still married, no matter what it took. I drove to Reno, then Lake Tahoe, the coast, Napa Valley, and Highway 1, zigzagging and zagging along the shoreline. Then I went to Yosemite, then to San Diego, through Death Valley, to Vegas, and then to Phoenix. I was in no hurry. Stopped in parking lots, talked to the owners, and just chatted. Some of them were jealous that a guy in his 30s could just pick up and travel. After about 3 months and 8,000 miles, I decided to return to Silver City. When I arrived at the Helpless Auto, I was greeted by my entire team. In fact, there were several new faces. They all welcomed my return. When I entered Anna's office, formerly my office, she raised her head. When she saw me, her smile grew even wider. She stood up, walked around her desk, and hugged me tightly. We talked for a while, and then I asked, "Do you think I can invite everyone to Wrangler's for food and drinks? Could you close the store at 5 Palau?" At this point, it was 3 Yo Wow, and I had a few errands to run. Of course, I will insist on this. The whole team will be there. I said goodbye and told them all that I'll see you in 2 hours. They were in a good mood. Then I visited my lawyer. He told me earlier when I was traveling that Jenna tried to go down the abandonment route to get all my property, but he was able to thwart her efforts. We talked about what to do next. At 5Y, I met the team at Wrangler's restaurant. We had a great dinner and it was nice talking to everyone. After about an hour and a half, they began to go home. Finally, it was just Anna and I left. She looked at me and said, You know, Kurt, you may think that you are helpless, vulnerable, and don't understand anything, but you're wrong. You simply trusted those you loved. I looked at her. So, you got it, right? Yes, it took me a while, but you said the new name would tell the whole story. This haunted me until I realized it. You may be Polish, but all these jokes can never describe the real you. These jokes are an insult to you and your roots. Thank you, Anna. You are truly the main reason for my return. I had to see how you handle my responsibilities. Happy to say that you have not filled my shoes, but rather created a pair of your own. I had an excellent mentor, she thanked. We hugged and she went home to her husband. He truly was a happy man. I returned to the apartment I had not been in for 3 months. It was musty here and needed good ventilation. I opened the windows and let the cool evening air fill the rooms. I grabbed a beer and sat on the terrace overlooking the pool. Several people were swimming there, and a family was playing. I thought about Jenna and me. We had such high hopes and dreams when we got married. Now, they have all disappeared. Looking at the clock on the wall, I saw that it was about 8:30. A thought flashed through my head. Looks like it's time for a showdown. I got up, jumped into my Miata, and drove to my house. I guess technically it was still mine. I bought it before Jenna and I got married, and my name was the only one on the deed. I was disappointed when I pulled into the driveway. The yard was not well kept. It seemed that the landscaping had not even been touched. The light was on, and I assumed Jenna was home. I went to the door and knocked. A minute later, the door opened and Carrie stood there. Her eyes got big, and she asked, "Dad?" "Hi, Carrie. Is your mom home?" She stuttered and then shouted, "Mother!" I heard Jenna shout from the kitchen in a tense, high-pitched voice. "What's the matter?" She continued to look at me and said loudly in response, "Dad!" Jenna came around the corner, saw me, and screamed, "Where are you going?" I decided to answer her cry in a calm, even voice, "Travel." At that moment, George came out of the bedroom wearing only his underpants. "Oh," I said, "the whole family is here, Mom, Dad, and child." "What the hell are you talking about?" Jenna spat back. "I suppose George moved to take my place. After all, it is rightfully his." Jenna looked at me with a puzzled expression. Carrie said, "He lost his apartment after you fired him, and Mom needed a man to help pay the bills and take care of other responsibilities here since you left then." The rage in her voice was palpable. "Well, young lady, it appears you are misinformed." She hated it when I corrected her. "George was never my employee at his insistence, so I could not fire him. As for bills, all utilities are paid, as is car insurance." "What about food and gasoline in the car?" Jenna shouted. "You had a job, did you lose it?" "I know that before it was just your mad money, but it was enough for groceries and gasoline while I was away." "So, you think you'll come back and just move back?" she asked. "No, I'll wait until you and your lover find somewhere to live." It was obvious that they were sleeping together in my house, and Carrie seemed okay with that. "I'm not going to move out of my house," Jenna said. "Correction, this is my house. He was mine before we got married, and only my name is written on the contract," I replied. "Well, you left, so now he's mine. The law doesn't work that way. Since I pay the utilities and taxes, I am still the legal owner, and even though I have been gone for a short period of time, I still own it. Don't worry, I'll give you lovebirds until the end of next month to find a place to live. Just make sure you take your daughter with you." "What does your daughter mean? She is our daughter." You couldn't think of more truthful words. I chuckled. Jenna looked puzzled. Then I said to Carrie, "Carrie, I know you hate being called Polish, so I have good news for you. Your real father is not me, but George." The silence in the room was deafening. After a minute, Jenna meekly asked, "What?" "Yes, Jenna. It seems that your little carelessness on your wedding day led to the appearance of a child, but not mine. But good news for you, Carrie. You can now take your real dad's last name and become Carrie Carrie." I wonder if maybe Mom didn't insist on the name Carrie as a sign of respect for her lover. I looked at Jenna, and she looked at George. He was white as a ghost. What, George? Don't you want to be a dad? Well, that's a shame. Take responsibility. But look at it this way, it's just 4 more years and then college. Jenna and George said almost in unison. I do not believe in that. I threw them the DNA report. See for yourself. They grabbed it, looked at it, and then both fainted. Carrie, tell the lovebirds that your mom will be served with divorce papers sometime next week, along with an eviction notice. I turned and walked away. The whole time I was gone, I wondered if this affair had been going on throughout the marriage. In fact, I wondered if she was even faithful to me. We met when she came to buy a car. George was working on a car, and we both thought it would be a great date. Did she choose me or not? I truly was helpless, ignorant, vulnerable. All this time, George laughed at me behind my back and also made Polish jokes in front of my face. I returned to the apartment and drank beer. In the morning, I went to the lawyer and asked him to start processing the documents. Of course, I knew that I would have to sell the house and split the proceeds, but being a barely working person, I did not have to pay alimony or child support, especially since there was already another man in my place. At least that's what I hoped. I loved Jenna and George too. The betrayal was incredible. It will take me a long time to trust anyone, be it a man or a woman. Maybe I should see a psychologist. As the divorce proceedings progressed, I returned to work at the car dealership, but as a salesman. I made it clear to all employees that I was no longer the boss and that I only needed 1 sale a week to pay the rent and buy groceries. In fact, I insisted on only 1. When it came to court-mandated child support, I wanted to ensure that at the end of the month, I had no money other than my own meager living expenses. Jenna hired a lawyer. I don't know how she could afford it. Maybe he worked pro bono. He'll be surprised. They looked at my bank accounts and saw that I had spent the proceeds from the sale. They even looked at the sale itself but found nothing wrong with it. They didn't dig deep enough. I heard from my fellow salespeople that while I was away, George came in almost every day for the first 2 weeks and talked to Anna about getting some work. She had no problem telling him no every time. In the end, he gave up. Now he regretted never getting his ASE certification because the only job he could find was at Valvoline Quick Oil Change with a salary of $13 per hour. I hoped Jenna went full-time or they would have a hard time making ends meet. I contacted the realtor and informed Jenna that I was putting the house on the market in anticipation of a 50-50 split of all of our assets. She had already been served with an eviction notice, so she had to move out before the house was sold and closed. One evening, there was a knock on my door. Of course, it was Jenna. Opening the door, I looked at her. What do you need? Kurt, can we talk? I don't think this is a good idea. We're in a lawsuit against each other. Come on, Kurt, it's just me here, no lawyers. Can't we sit down and have a civil conversation? Yeah, I guess, but let's go to Denny's, I said. There will be witnesses, I thought to myself. I didn't trust her enough to be alone with her. We sat down in a booth at Denny's, and after a couple minutes of pleasantries, I asked, "Why, Jenna?" She looked at me, hesitated, and answered, "I think the simple answer is that I liked both of you, and I couldn't decide." So you were dating both of us at the same time? She looked down at the table. Yes, but George told me not to tell you anything because he knew it would ruin your personal and work relationship with him. So when I asked you to marry me, why did you say yes? Because I loved you. What about George? I asked. I loved him too, but I understood that he would never be a suitable husband. When you asked me, he and I discussed it and ended our relationship. I wanted to focus on us and the preparations for our wedding. So, on our wedding day, while having sex with him, you said, "I'm marrying him, but you're still my man." She started crying. Everything was wrong. Then what was it, Jenna? She hesitated and then said, "I didn't want to lose him, and he didn't want to lose me." Well, now you have each other and your child. By the way, she did a great job with the name. I didn't even notice until I had time to think during the 3 months on the road. I didn't know Carrie wasn't yours. I really didn't. Then she looked at me and said, "Kurt, I wanted to talk to you today to tell you that I still love you." It's nice to hear from you, Jenna, but I don't think you know what love is. I loved you more than anything in the world, and obviously you can't say the same. I loved you, but I can honestly say that I don't love you anymore. I loved you with all my heart, but now I feel only contempt for you. When I said this, she looked up at me and realized that our relationship was over. There will never be us again. I had to ask her one more question. Have you ever stopped? She hesitated and then apparently decided that it didn't matter and told the truth. We never stopped. We had our lulls, but we got together, usually twice a month. I was hoping for a different answer, but I was still glad she told me the truth. One more question. What happened about a year ago that made you treat me so badly? Your attitude towards me began to change. The outward contempt was obvious. Her face turned red, then she got a little angry. George started trying to talk me into having a threesome, and not with you. I probably could have done it if you had participated, but we couldn't figure out how to do it. He kept insisting on it, and it made me resent you for something I know you would never do. I know it sounds strange, but I thought I could have my two men loving me together, and I resented you for not being the person to allow it. So you did it? I asked. No, I thought about it, but then you left and my whole world collapsed. Well, now you can do it knowing that I don't care. What you do doesn't bother me anymore. We both knew our time to talk was over, so I paid the bill and we walked to our cars. 4 months later, we stood before a judge and he declared us divorced. George was there too. As we were leaving the courthouse, Jenna said, "Maybe we can have a drink the old-fashioned way." Of course, I said. By this time, the animosity I felt towards the two of them had disappeared. Then I thought, this will be the last time I have to be with them. Now, they can be alone. Let the pigs live in their own filth. They deserve each other. Ha! Jenna will have to get used to a lower standard of living. Okay, maybe the animosity hasn't gone away. I may be Polish, but I am a respected person. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one.